a secret he could no longer hide. Nathaniel was 15, quiet and almost invisible at school. At 5'6" and around 130 pounds, with untidy brown hair and green eyes, he looked like an ordinary teenager. He earned average grades, had no interest in sports, rarely joined school activities, and preferred staying unnoticed. It was almost as if he had perfected the art of disappearing while standing right in front of everyone. His mother, Gail Grant, had always worried about him. After losing her husband, Howard, and their daughter, Jane, in a tragic car accident, Nathaniel withdrew even further. Gail tried everything she could think of to bring him out of his shell, but nothing seemed to work. He became quieter, more distant, and increasingly reluctant to talk about what was going on inside his head. Then one afternoon, while cleaning his room, something she rarely had to do, Gail discovered several printed pages tucked among his belongings. She began reading them and slowly realized that the clues she had overlooked for years had been there all along. Nathaniel had been struggling with questions about his identity and how he wanted to live. He had been afraid to tell anyone, terrified that the people closest to him would reject him. Gail needed time to process what she had discovered. Fortunately, her brother Matt had become a dependable presence in Nathaniel's life since the accident, giving the boy someone he could look up to when his own father was no longer there. Gail eventually contacted an old school friend, Jill, who had gone through her own journey of gender identity years earlier. Gail didn't know exactly what to say to her son, but Jill encouraged her to approach him with patience rather than judgment. Meanwhile, Nathaniel had been carrying the secret for years. He had always felt that something about the way others expected him to live didn't quite fit. As he entered high school, those feelings became impossible to ignore. He spent countless nights searching for answers, reading stories from people who had experienced similar struggles, and wondering whether he would ever have the courage to tell his mother. His greatest fear wasn't that Gail wouldn't understand immediately. It was that she might look at him differently afterward. One Friday afternoon, Gail finally asked him to sit down with her. Nathaniel immediately knew something was different. She didn't lecture him or demand an explanation. Instead, she gently told him that she had found the pages in his room and that she now understood why he had been keeping so much to himself. Nathaniel tried to deny it at first, but his mother's calm expression made it difficult to continue pretending. For the first time, he admitted that he had been questioning his identity for a long time and that he was scared of what would happen if anyone found out. Gail listened. She didn't have all the answers, and she knew there would be difficult conversations ahead. But she made one thing clear. Whatever Nathaniel was feeling, he didn't have to face it alone. For the first time in years, Nathaniel felt as though someone had finally seen the person hiding behind his silence, seeing himself differently. I stood there in silence, unsure of what Mom was thinking. She didn't react immediately or say anything that would make me feel embarrassed. Instead, she simply gestured for me to continue. With a nervous sigh, I removed my shirt and stood awkwardly in front of her. For the first time, I had allowed someone else to see the changes I had been trying so desperately to hide. I immediately felt exposed and anxious, waiting for her reaction. Mom took a quiet breath. "Nathaniel," she finally asked, "do you want to tell me what's been going on?" That was all it took. I sat down on the edge of the bed and began talking. At first, the words came slowly, but once I started, I couldn't stop. I told her about the confusion I had carried for years, the things I had read online, the way I imagined living differently, and how frightened I had been to tell anyone. Eventually, I broke down, and Mom pulled me into a hug. I expected disappointment. Instead, she told me that she loved me and that she wasn't going anywhere. She admitted that when she first discovered my secret, she had considered helping me explore a different presentation for a weekend. But after understanding how deeply I had been struggling, she realized this wasn't something that could simply be treated like a costume or a temporary experiment. "If this is important to you," she said gently, "then we'll take things one step at a time." Her words were comforting, but they also made me nervous. I had spent so long imagining what it might be like to present myself differently, yet actually doing it was another matter entirely. Mom had already bought a few simple outfits. "You don't have to wear anything you're uncomfortable with," she explained. "We'll start slowly, and you can decide what feels right." I nodded. She suggested that I shower and get ready while she prepared everything. Afterward, I returned wearing a towel and sat at her vanity. Mom helped style my hair, carefully working through it until it fell into a softer, more polished shape. Then she showed me how to use a small amount of makeup. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make me feel like I was finally experimenting with the appearance I had imagined for so long. When she finished, she handed me a blouse and a skirt she had chosen earlier. I changed privately and then stood in front of the mirror. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. The person looking back at me wasn't the version of myself I had always pictured. It wasn't perfect, and I still felt nervous, but there was something strangely familiar about the reflection. Mom smiled from behind me. "How do you feel?" I looked at myself again. "Different," I whispered. She nodded. "Different doesn't have to mean wrong." Those words stayed with me. For the first time, I wasn't hiding behind oversized clothes or pretending that the questions inside my head didn't exist. I was finally beginning to understand myself, and more importantly, I knew I didn't have to figure everything out alone. Meeting the world as Jenny. Mom finished styling my hair, brushing it carefully so that it fell neatly down my back, with the front swept softly to one side. She then fastened a small locket around my neck and added simple earrings. A light touch of perfume completed the look. She stepped back and studied me for a moment. I knew that expression. It was the same proud, careful look a mother might give her daughter before sending her out into the world for the first time. "Well," Mom finally said with a smile, "I'd say you're more than presentable. You look lovely, Nathaniel." We sat outside beneath the shade with glasses of iced tea. Once we settled down, Mom became more serious. "How long have you been dealing with all of this on your own?" I looked down. "For years," I admitted. I explained how long I'd been questioning myself and how much of it I'd kept hidden. Mom listened without interrupting. She was clearly concerned, especially after realizing that I'd made decisions about my body without understanding the consequences. "We're going to see your doctor," she said firmly. "I want you to get proper medical advice and make sure you're healthy." I nodded. I never expected things to become this complicated, I confessed. I thought I could figure everything out myself. Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You don't have to do that anymore." After a moment, she asked a question I hadn't expected. "Have you ever thought about what you'd like to be called?" I shook my head. "Not really." She thought for a moment. "What about Jennifer?" I looked at her. "Jennifer?" "It was the name I would have chosen if you'd been born a girl," she explained. "Jennifer Marie Grant. I think it suits you." I repeated the name quietly. Jennifer. Somehow, hearing it aloud felt strangely natural. "I like it." Mom smiled. "Then we'll use it while you figure out what feels right." There was still one enormous problem. Uncle Matt and my grandparents. I assumed I would be allowed to change back into my usual clothes before anyone else saw me, but Mom shook her head. "I think you're ready to take one small step outside this house," she said. "You don't have to pretend anymore." Before I could answer, Uncle Matt arrived. He walked onto the patio, stopped when he saw me, and stared for a moment. "What's going on?" he asked.
Mom looked at me.
I knew she wanted me to explain. My heart pounded as I took a breath. "Uncle Matt."
"This is me."
I've felt this way for a very long time. His expression changed immediately. "You mean this isn't some school thing?" "No." Mom explained what she had discovered and how long I had been struggling with my identity. Matt was clearly shocked. At first, he was angry and confused, asking questions and wondering whether Mom had encouraged all of this. But Mom stood her ground. "Nobody forced this on him," she said. "We're trying to understand him and support him." Matt didn't have an easy answer. He eventually admitted that he needed time to process everything. I could tell he wasn't comfortable with the situation yet, and neither was I. But at least the secret was no longer mine alone. That evening, Mom asked me to continue using the name Jennifer at home while we worked through everything together. The next morning, I stayed home from school. Mom helped me get ready, and this time I handled my own makeup. Looking into the mirror still felt strange, but I was beginning to recognize the person I wanted to become. After breakfast, Mom drove me to our family doctor's office. I was terrified. The nurse had known me since I was a baby, yet she barely recognized me when we entered. "We need to see Dr. Benson," Mom explained. "It's urgent." A few minutes later, the doctor called us inside. Dr. Benson had been there the day I was born. Now he was sitting across from me, listening carefully as Mom explained everything that had happened. He didn't laugh or judge me. Instead, he asked questions. How long had I been struggling? When had I first started questioning my identity? Had I told anyone before? How was I coping emotionally? I answered as honestly as I could. Dr. Benson explained that there was a lot to evaluate and that making assumptions based only on appearance would be irresponsible. He recommended a full medical checkup, appropriate blood tests, and professional support so we could understand exactly what was happening and determine the safest path forward. When the examination was finished, he sat down with Mom and me. "This is complicated," he said gently. "But complicated doesn't mean hopeless." He explained that some of the decisions I had made on my own could have serious consequences, especially without medical supervision. He also emphasized that questions about gender identity should be handled carefully, with qualified professionals involved. "You don't have to solve your entire future today," he told me. "Right now, our priority is making sure you're healthy and that you have the support you need." For the first time since everything had begun, I felt a little less frightened. I still didn't know exactly where my future would lead. But now I had my mother beside me, a doctor willing to listen, and a name that somehow felt like the beginning of a new chapter. Jennifer. For now, that was enough. The doctor continued explaining what the future might hold. Even if I stopped taking the pills immediately, he said, the changes I had already experienced might continue. My hips could become fuller, and my breasts might develop further. Starting male hormones might reduce some of the breast growth, but there was no guarantee that everything would return to the way it had been. My ability to have normal erections could remain uncertain, and the changes to my body might be permanent. Because I had begun the medication so young, my male puberty had been interrupted before my voice had fully changed. Once the female hormones took over, my voice had essentially stopped developing. Considering everything, he said, the safest option is probably to adjust the hormone dosage properly and allow her to continue living as a girl. Mom stared at him in disbelief. She'll also need some electrolysis to deal with the remaining facial hair, he added. Given enough time, she'll probably blend in naturally with other girls her age. Then he explained that there was a minor procedure that could alter the appearance of my genital area without removing anything. It would involve repositioning the urethra and making a few other adjustments so that my anatomy would appear more typically female. Mom barely knew what to say. Before I fully understood what was happening, the procedure was arranged. When I finally walked out of the office, everything felt strangely different. I was still me, yet the person looking back at me seemed increasingly like the girl I had been trying to become. The doctor handed Mom my prescription and gave her the name of a specialist who could help remove the remaining beard growth. "Well," Mom said quietly once we were outside, "it looks like you were right. Now we just have to figure out how to tell Uncle Matt." We drove in silence for several minutes before Mom finally pulled over. "There is one thing we need to settle first," she said. "You have to finish this school term as Nathaniel. After that, you'll have the entire summer to transition into Jenny. By the time school starts again, you'll have to face whatever happens." She took a breath. "And you're going to need clothes." That afternoon, Mom took me to the mall and introduced me to an entirely unfamiliar world, shopping for girls' clothes. She approached it like any other mother helping her daughter build a wardrobe. I naturally gravitated toward the shorter skirts I had seen girls at school wearing, but Mom insisted on something more modest. We settled on 2 skirts and a dress, all falling just above my knees. The lingerie department was even more awkward. Mom borrowed a measuring tape and taught me how bra sizes worked. Eventually, we bought 3 bras, a simple white one, a peach-colored one with lace trim, and a seamless white one edged with pale blue lace. Then came underwear, shoes, and everything else I had never imagined buying for myself. By the time we left, I had a dozen pairs of cotton panties, a pair of flats, and a more formal pair of black patent heels. At home, I put everything away in my closet. Seeing those clothes hanging beside my old things made the whole situation feel suddenly real. We ate a small lunch together, but Mom barely touched hers. Do you understand how difficult this is going to be? She finally asked. For you, and for all of us? I nodded. You think being a girl is simply about wearing different clothes, she continued. It isn't. There are expectations, judgments, responsibilities, and pressures. People will judge you by how you dress, how you behave, how you keep your home, and eventually by the choices you make in relationships. Being a woman isn't some game. I knew she wasn't trying to discourage me. She was frightened for me. And school will be difficult, she added. Some students may laugh. Some may ignore you. Others could be cruel. You might be teased or harassed. The boys may not know how to treat you, and some of the girls may not immediately accept you either. She paused and squeezed my hand. And then there's the rest of the family. Your grandparents may try to understand, but Uncle Matt is going to struggle with this. No matter what happens, Jenny, we love you. We'll protect you as much as we can. But you'll have to learn not to let every harsh word destroy your confidence. I wiped away a tear. Couldn't I just keep pretending? I asked. I could wear the clothes on weekends and go back to being Nathaniel during the week. I've been hiding everything for more than a month and nobody knows. Mom shook her head. That can't continue forever. How would we explain a girl appearing every weekend and a boy returning Monday morning? Two completely different wardrobes, two identities, and eventually someone would discover the truth. Once school ends, I think you need to become Jenny full-time. There was no uncertainty in her voice. The fall will be difficult, she continued, especially because we can't afford to send you somewhere private. You'll have to face your classmates and find your place. For a moment, I wondered why I had ever started taking the pills. Then I remembered the feeling I had whenever I imagined stopping. Somehow, despite everything that frightened me, becoming Jenny still felt like the right path. I'll do my best, I told her. And I meant it. Over the following months, Mom became my teacher. Every day, she spent an hour helping me learn things I had never paid attention to before. She showed me different hairstyles, taught me how to apply makeup without overdoing it, corrected the way I walked, and reminded me to stop moving my hands the way I had as a boy. At first, it was tedious and embarrassing. Sometimes we both laughed at my mistakes. But slowly, I improved. By the time autumn arrived, I had learned enough to feel comfortable presenting myself as Jenny. Uncle Matt was another matter. He spoke to me, but there was always a distance between us. Every once in a while, I caught a flash of anger in his expression, and I knew he still hadn't accepted what had happened. On the third weekend after school began, I decided I couldn't keep avoiding the conversation. I dressed carefully, trying to look as feminine and composed as possible. I wore a pleated skirt, a blouse, modest heels, a touch of pink lipstick, and a little perfume. Then I walked to Uncle Matt's den and closed the door behind me. Uncle Matt, I said nervously, we need to talk. He looked up. His eyes moved over me as though he were searching for some trace of the boy he remembered. I know what Mom said was going to happen, I continued. The teasing, the judgment, maybe even worse. I knew all of that before I started this. He remained silent. This isn't easy for me either, I said. I'm the one who has to live with every change. I'm the one who has to walk into school and face people while learning how to become someone completely different. My voice trembled. I know taking those pills was reckless, but I felt like if I didn't do it then, I'd regret waiting forever. I love you, Uncle Matt. I don't expect you to understand everything. I just want you to try. He stared at me for several long seconds. I finally turned toward the door. Jennifer. I stopped. It was the first time he had called me by my new name. Come back and sit down. I slowly returned to the chair. Uncle Matt leaned back and sighed. You're right, he said. I don't understand why you did this. I don't understand why you feel that becoming a girl is the only answer. But you're my sister's child, and you're someone I love very much. His expression softened. I won't let anyone hurt you if I can prevent it. I lowered my eyes. As for those hormone pills, he continued, I still think taking them without talking to us was incredibly dangerous. You knew we had an agreement. Whatever was bothering you, you could have told us. We could have talked about it. He paused. That's what hurts me most, Jenny. Not that you're different. It's that you thought you had to face all of this alone. You didn't trust us to help you understand the way you feel. I love you and would never hurt you, and I can even accept the fact that I now have a niece. What I cannot and will not accept is deceit. He was angry, hurt, and I was the cause of it. Uncle Matt, can we start over as a Uncle Matt and niece? When his arms reached out for me, I jumped into his arms and held him tight, my tears staining his shirt. We're going out to dinner tonight, Jenny. You better go clean up and change. I went to my room and quickly undressed and jumped into the shower. My hair was squeaky clean, and my skin almost glowed from the scrubbing I gave it. I used the scented body powder and slipped on some panties. Before I pulled on the panty brief, I had become adept at doing my hair and quickly had the rollers, and then I did my makeup using as little as possible with soft muted shades on my eyes. The eyeliner was a deep black, however, because it made my face seem more open. I slipped the peach-colored bra on, and then the pantyhose, and took the pleated tan skirt out of the closet. I picked a pink and white blouse and put them on, making sure that the skirt was as high up on my waist as I could get it so more of my legs showed. The pink heels, purse, and pink and gold jewelry were next. Then I took the rollers out and brushed my hair out using pink and gold barrettes to hold my hair away from my face. I drew on the soft red lipstick, gave myself a spritz of perfume, and walked back into Uncle Matt's office. Mom was there all dressed up, and Uncle Matt had a suit on. They looked at me, and I felt like a bug stuck on the wall. You look very nice, Jenny. Plan on catching a boy? There was humor in his eyes when he asked me that, but to get him back, I said, why not? I'm pretty enough, ain't I? Of course you are, but be careful what you ask for, you might get it. After that, Uncle Matt drove us to his club, something that I did not count on. I'm an only child, and everyone at the club knows that, so when they showed up with me, a girl, the obvious connection is that the girl they'll see would be my mother's son, Nathaniel. They didn't ask me, and I had no say in the matter. All I could do was follow them and sit at the table and try to be as feminine as I could. Twice during dinner, Uncle Matt was asked, and he introduced me as his niece Jennifer, and several times I heard choked, but I thought you had a nephew. Before they walked away after dinner, the band started to play, and Mom and Uncle Matt were dancing when I felt a hand on my elbow. Excuse me, would you like to dance? I turned and saw Mike Wilson, a friend I had known since we started school. He had to know who I was. I'd like that. Thank you. He took my hand and led me to the dance floor. He held me tightly in his arms, and I could smell his aftershave. You look real nice. My name is Mike Wilson. What's yours? Jenny Grant. Jenny Grant. Are you related to Nate? When Mom and I talked about this happening, she told me to be honest. If a boy was interested in me or knew me, I should tell them who I was and let things go where they would. In a way, Mike, I used to be Nate. Now I'm Jenny. You certainly look and smell like a girl. Is that true, Michael? Would someone say they are not a girl and look like this? No, I guess not. Mike, we have been friends for a long time. Can you accept me as a girl now? Sure, why not? You look a lot better than some of the girls at school, and we already know a lot about each other. Then his grip around my waist tightened, and I knew that he had accepted me. Later, as we were about to leave, Mike came to our table and asked if he could call me the next day, which made me smile, and I said yes, of course. It looks like Jennifer has a suitor. Gail, maybe it's time for that mother-daughter talk. It's only a phone call. Uncle Matt, relax. His snort told me that he didn't believe that. For a minute that night, I lay in bed and wondered why Mike wanted to call me when there were so many real girls available to him. He was tall and Nick-looking, had good manners, and dressed nice. Every girl I knew wanted him to call her, and yet he was calling me in the morning. I wore shorts that I had cut off, which let the cheeks of my butt hang out a bit, a t-shirt, and my tennis shoes. Because of the estrogen, I now had a very healthy shape, which after I had been changed by the doctor was very definitely female. Uncle Matt looked at me and snorted, reminding me that I would have to change if Mike came over. I don't want him thinking you're that kind of girl, Jenny. If he comes over, you'll wear a skirt and blouse, or jeans and a blouse, but not that it's indecent. Mom told me essentially the same thing, but I waited for Mike to call before I did anything. Mike called around 1 and asked if he could come over, and I said yes. Then I ran to my room to change, not into a skirt or jeans, but one of the dresses I had bought. It was like a sheath, except that it flared at the waist, and the hem was mid-thigh on me. It had square neck and 2 straps to hold it up. I put on my black flats and digged my lipstick in perfume finishing just as Mike rang the doorbell. When Uncle Matt saw me, he choked a bit because some of my charms were showing at the top of the dress, but Mike just stared until I took his hand, and on the way through the kitchen to the patio, we grabbed some sodas. I guess it's true you are Nate? No, Mike, it's Jennifer from now on. I'll be going to school in the fall as Jennifer. And it sure would be nice to know I had someone I could count on. He was looking at me strangely, and I wondered why, because I was pretty careful. When I got dressed, something wrong? I asked. No, but I'm wondering why. I never knew that you wanted to be a girl. After all, we've known each other since we started school. Would you tell anybody if it was you? I guess not, but why now? That was a very good question, one I had even wondered about myself. I don't think I could have stood it any more, Mike. I wanted to be a girl and started taking some of Mom's estrogen to see what would happen, and all at once I had a body like a girl. I saw her doctor, and he told me I might as well become a girl because there was no way I could become a boy again. Since then I have been dressing as a girl on the weekends. As soon as school lets out, I'll become Jenny all of the time from then on. His eyes never left my face except when they drifted to my obvious charms. The junior prom is in 2 weeks. Would you like to go? Before I could answer him, he added, if you're going to school as Jennifer in the fall anyway, why not go to the dance and finish the year as Jennifer? I'd like that, Mike. Yes, I'll go to the dance with you. He held my hand for a minute and then asked me to walk down to the drugstore with him. I have to get some razor blades before I go home. Want to come? I did. And on the way out, I yelled at Uncle Matt that we were walking to the store. I was back within the hour, and then I told Mom and Uncle Matt that Mike had asked me to the prom and what he said about finishing school as Jenny. A date already? Yes, Uncle Matt, a date. But to the junior prom, how? Do you know this isn't just a way for him to humiliate you in front of the entire school? Because I've known Mike my entire life, and he isn't that way, and besides, it wasn't in his eyes. I turned and went to my room before we got into an argument. Uncle Matt was starting to become very protective of me, especially after we had our talk. Mom and I went shopping for just the right prom dress, and even though I wanted something sleek and slinky, tight and revealing, Mom insisted on a more conventional style. But before she and I started looking for a dress, she also insisted that I get fitted for corselet. In her words, you might as well get used to what we endure to fit into the smallest dress size we can, and besides that, you'll want to be as feminine as possible. As much as I knew she was right, I had no idea just how a corselet worked until I had one on. My waist felt as if it had been cut in two as it pulled my natural 25 inches waist down to 21, and my boobs, however, had been pushed up and strained against the cups of the bra, threatening to jump out at any moment, and my hips were now perfect for my new shape. I expected to be able to take it off, but Mom told me to leave it on so that the dress could be fitted correctly. I could walk, talk, and move my arms, but bending was almost out of the question now, and my breathing was a bit labored. Mom, however, told me I would get used to it after a few days, and simply walked into the dress shop. In the end, the dress we bought was a shimmering green satin over 3 layers of crowd and petticoats. The top was a sweetheart style with a single strap that went around my neck with the hem just above my knees. The shoes were coated in silver sequins, and my jewelry was white rhinestone earrings with a green stone in the middle set in silver. The necklace was a small pendant with a matching stone. How about some very special panties to go with the dress, Jenny? Great, I said, picking them out myself. Mom saying nothing when she saw them, high cut on the sides with barely enough material to cover half of my butt, and a small triangle in front. They were made of green satin to match the dress. I was in heaven and wanted to try on the whole outfit as soon as we got home, so Mom helped me get dressed, and then I walked in on Uncle Matt. He stood up like he had been poked and stared at me. I don't think anyone will confuse you with any boy they know. Jenny, you look wonderful. Smiling, I went back to my room, and Mom helped me get undressed except for the corselet. You should wear it as often as you can, Jenny, to break it in, or you'll be in pain at the dance and not have a very nice time. I wore the corselet for the next 2 days, finally taking it off so I could go back to school, but each night I wore it to bed, and each morning I took it off. My usual appointment to see the doctor was on Saturday, and when I was alone with him, I asked him if there was a way to make me look more feminine down below. I think that with some more very minor modifications to what I have already done, we can make you look exactly like a girl. I promise you'll love it. He asked my mother, and after he explained it, and I begged, she agreed. It took 2 hours. But when I went home, I had what looked like a more natural vagina. In 2 days, the stitches fell out, and there was no sign of any operation because he had used surgical adhesive mostly. No matter how many times I feel myself, I was always amazed at the way the newie felt almost the same as before, but better. Mike told me he would be over at 7 on the day of the prom, and that same day I had my first appointment at a beauty salon. I recognized most of the girls there, but none of them gave me a second look, and none recognized me. My brown hair was tinted auburn and then styled in a Gibson with sausage curls hanging down the back and sides. My nails were done and painted a soft red, and by the time I left the salon, I knew that I was going to look great. That night, I took a bubble bath and began to get dressed, starting with those wonderful satin panties. Now that there was no obstruction, they fit me like a glove. Then the pantyhose and my makeup. Mom came in and helped me with the corselet, which now fit easily as my waist had become slightly smaller due to the constant pressure. Nathaniel is 15, a frustrated teenager who is unable to find any solace to his dilemma. He was average in everything: 5 feet 6 inches in tall, 130 pounds, wet brown hair, green eyes, an average student that did not like sports and did not join any clubs in school, nondescript and unassuming. He had managed to hide himself from the world, yet stay in plain sight. As his mother, I am worried about him, because I could not figure out why he was so shy after my husband Howard and my daughter Jane were killed in an auto accident. Nathaniel seemed to retreat into himself even more. And no matter what I tried, nothing worked. I never had a clue what was bothering him until I went into his room to clean up a bit, something I rarely did, and found several pages of stuff he had printed from the internet. I read them, and all at once I understood. All of the signs were there, but since I did not know what they were, I missed them. I had to think about it for a while before I decided what to do. Luckily, my brother Matt was there to fill in as a surrogate dad for Nate. My name is Gail Grant. I'm 35, Nathaniel's mother. I grew up when all sorts of people were coming out of the closet about different things, including cross-dressing. In fact, one of my high school classmates had gone through the entire process, had the surgery, and is now a woman. On Friday, I called her to ask for advice, and she told me to confront the issue with him, maybe even help him become a girl for a short time, maybe a weekend. Jill merely confirmed what I wanted to do, and while Nathaniel was at school, I said about making it possible. My name is Nathaniel, and all my life, I had an irresistible urge, like an itch that you can't scratch. The more I ignored it, the more it itched. I knew what it was, of course. I had always known I wanted to dress and live as a girl. When I was just starting into high school, I set out to find a way to make my dreams come true. Since I had felt this way all of my life, I knew that I had to at least try it. About the same time Mom began to take estrogen tablets. From my research on the internet, I was pretty sure